It's a great pleasure for us to be part of this slow, multi-annual project, Driving the Human. As it was a huge pleasure as well to finally install Swamp Observatory exhibition or installation at the critical zones at ZKM. So on behalf of our team, a big team, not only two of us, but the big team, we would like to thank you for invitation and these amazing opportunities to share our practice and project. Yeah, Gediminas, what is driving the human?
I don't know. I mean, I can only speak for myself. What drives me, I can speak also for maybe our practice. And the answer is very blunt, swamp. Swamp is what drives human. Why? I think through the history of the humanity, we have very troublesome, very complex relationship with our environment. And I think swamp is the essence of it. Human settlements were expanding on the coast of the territories of the swamp. We violated all the boundaries with animals, with water, with the ecotons. Swamps are the ecotons, the transitory ecosystem. And what is happening, that swamps coming back. They're coming back in the form of the repressed, and we yet don't know how to deal with that. So, of course, through the history, we've been extracting, well, we, humans, moderns, extracting the peat moss that is absolutely fantastic material, and as it is a result of the 1,000 years of the compression of the plants, the spores, it registers all the climatic conditions and all the exchanges. Basically, we could say that it is a frozen coral reef, frozen, kind of like marmalade. It is registers all the exchanges, holobiontic exchanges, but also it compresses the memories of exploitation, of resilience, of disobedience. As we know from the histories of the Maroons who found their escape in the swamps. Swamps were not only the malign places as the Great Dismal Swamp, but also they were places for the escape, for hope, for human imagination. It was also inspiration for many artists like William Blake or Gustavo Doré or many other artists who, and also cinematographers who try to negotiate this uncanny relationship with the swamp as the place of escape, place where where something that is not allowed can happen, the riparian place, place that cannot be submitted to regulation, to the regimes of governmentality. You know, swamps are always escaping from those regimes. They cannot be contained by the national territories. They're always also places for the fairy tales, for prejudice, also places where we can find eco-fiction, as in Ursula Le Guin's writing, or also like in Swamp Thing, you know, that is also looking for some feminine, some powers, almost like, you know, we could say like an earth womb, as well for. And again, sorry for this anthropomization of the natural environment. For us, it is also swamp is interesting as the metonym, as under the swamp we find fens, bogs, and many other natural environments that otherwise can be called wetlands. But we specifically interested in the swamp because of political rhetoric, you know, that has the origins in the 19th century, the draining of the swamps, or drenare de palude. But as well, it is also inspiration for many artists like Robert Smithson or Juan Downey, who are trying to look also at indigenous epistemologies, at something that can be called also invisible architecture, that is produced by these relations between human and non-human or more than human entities through the daily rituals, language, and so on. But what is being done by science about the swamps? As we know, it took hundreds and hundreds for the swamps to be subscribed in the biosphere registry by the United Nations. We got inspiration from Karl Albert Weber, a German botanist who spent several years in Memel Delta. That was a former territory of the Prussia, nowadays is part of Lithuania. But as we know, the swamps are leaking, they're disobeying the boundaries. And Karl Albert Weber was studying again, inspired by Humboldt, Humboldtian idea that is looking into relationships and interdependencies between the air and the soil and the plants, who register those interdependencies through their intricate shapes. As a botanist, he was trying to sort of like build the scholarship of the swamp. And in his beautiful writing, he was also observing the different optical perspectives that are happening because of accumulation of the methionine and the gases. As we know, the air in the swamp is a bit different. And also because of the high acidity of the soil and the peat, it informs also the patterns of the plants. But these interdependencies are not only between the soil, air, and water, and the plants, but also humans are part of that milieu. So the starting point in the swamp school was to enter that milieu, to enter that first scientifically researched swamp, where Karl Albert Weber spent 3 years and published the so-called Swamp Bible, the first study on the raised bogs, and to understand how this spongy entity, how this milieu, how this being that has this enormous capacity to function as a machine can also become our learning environment for the unpredictability, uncertainty, also instability. As we are living in the times where the cities are getting submerged in the water, and Venice has registered through its history hundreds of years of that experience. It is also important for us to think how can we learn from the swamp in order to adapt not only ourselves, but also adapt our education and our relationship with the surrounding environment. So swamp becomes the perfect place for the engagement and for the study, where these complicated relations happen in the Venice, and specifically if we speak about Venice Biennale, for which we were commissioned to conceive the curatorial proposition for the National Pavilion. Our starting point was precisely looking into the swamp that can help us to change habits of thought. Why should we think of the national in the times of the total war, of the total crisis? It is irrelevant. So we started to articulate a swamp pavilion that leaks through the national boundaries, that acquires the clandestine character, that acquires also the idea of the embodiments, where the pavilion can itself can be dispersed, can be spread, can also use the whole Venice as a classroom, the whole lagoon as a classroom. The inspiration for this comes from the swamp, but also comes from the cybernetics. Stafford Beer, who was designing the cyber scene, this supercomputer for the Chilean government, he was studying the pond. Okay, it's not precisely the swamp, but as we're using the swamp as a metonymy for many of these ecosystems. So we can also say that Stafford Beer was inspired by the swamp as a brain. You know, he suggested to plug the homeostatic system, the system that can offer the human organizational systems the balance, plug into the human organizations and think how it could help us to cope with something that is beyond our capacity to cope. So, so inspired by Stafford Beer and also Gordon Pask, we try to organize the curatorial, but also artistic and pedagogical program and events and the spatial organization of the Swamp School. Organizing in the 3 chapters, Swamp Radio, that is dealing with transmission and listening, Futurity Islands, that is focusing on sympoietics, on symbiotic relations, and the communism, that is looking into the cohabitation. To support that work, we edited 3 manuals, each for each chapter, and each manual has 3 propositions. One that is dealing with the question of swamp and modernity, another that is looking into pedagogy of the amphibian, and that is our rereading of the transdisciplinarity, and also looking into the examples, historic examples of the hybrid practices, figures such as the Harrisons, Juan Downey, Marianne Amisher, and so on. So just looking into the Swamp Radio, where the listening to the sounds of the distorted planets is impossible without specific technology, we're bringing the artist to record voices of the environment in Venice, to intervene and also to transmit within the radius of the lagoon. So this becomes the radio for the lagoon. And it has, as you can see, 2-way transmission, listening and transmitting on the spot, but also looking into the specific gear, like in Jana Winderen practice, where you need technology in order to listen to those frequencies that otherwise are not accessible to human ear, not also to eliminate techniques that suggest the indigenous techniques that suggest possibilities of listening through our bodies, listening through our bones, and connecting the human skeleton to the tree, to the roots of the mangrove tree, and so on. Looking also into the energy cycles, like in the project of the mud battery. Also looking into the technology that is suggested by the insect, and according to Mark Wigley, we as humans becoming insects with the help of the antennas and help of our mobile devices that help us to listen and to transmit and constantly to reconfigure our disposition in the environment, constantly produce the images and sounds that confirm that register and create yet new layers of imagination. So, of course, the infrastructure that is being deployed here are the pipes. As we know, the pipe is the major symbol of Anthropocene. So we are hacking, we are bringing this back from the swamps by saying, don't drain the swamp, we're bringing it back to the cultural poetic domain. We're trying to expand the idea of the infrastructure, hacking it from the techno-administrative sector, so to speak. Not to forget also workshops with children that engage the idea that architecture can also be done not only by the human, but also by the insects, by other species, and understanding that we are always sharing the habitats. And the model itself, or what we call the pet. So this is our pet swamp that is being brought by the group of biologists, group of scientists and architects to Venice. So this is the Nordic coral that supported by the peat of 3,000 years. And we are looking at how in this new condition, the new climatic condition of Venice, which is much more warmer and also more saline, the new species can appear, the new relationships can be built. also looking into the economic cycles of the such, for example, as a tourism and also souvenirs, and how all that is affecting the natural cycles, also affecting the surrounding, and how the swamp as a sponge can sort of like absorb and absorb and filter and decontaminate, participating in these economic exchanges. Also looking at how the Venice is also part of the archipelago, and the islands been always registering these reciprocal relationships between the human economy and economy of the others. And in this case, Campalto Island itself is being rendered from the garbage. And as we're talking about human, non-human, and modern human, I think it is also very important to bring into attention the voices of those that are being pushed at the sides of the society, as in this case, the Assemblea Sociale per la Casa, the community of people, of the homeless people of Venice that are really suffering because of the Airbnb, and at the same time looking into how the local ecosystem, namely the Phragmites and other plants that can be found in the Barenas, in the lagoon of Venice, can actually be used for the restoration, for the and also bring the vernacular techniques instead of like bringing some building technologies that are produced by using chemistry. As well, looking at the foraging and also our relationship between our body and how for the fermentation and through cooking, we could also make healthy relationship.
How you feed yourself and your body, you feed your mental abilities, you feed your mood, definitely inspire you to share these nice effects or gradable effects towards the others.
And as the cooking and also understanding the well-being of the human body that is absolutely interwoven in the milieu. It is part of the milieu, and this interdependency can also be inspiring for the architecture. We are looking into the vernacular techniques such as Torfhouse in Iceland, which is the most windy and most humid and most cold place on the planet. The combination of the three perhaps would be very rare to find in any other place. And that is where the well-being is being also scientifically measured with the help of the French biologists who counted every bacteria and every eukaryote that are conditioning the healthy well-being of the human body in these extreme conditions. So here the argument is, of course, to look at the vernacular techniques such as Torfhouse. The swamp for us, it is a project of imagination. It is a project that can help to deschool and also decolonize minds and thinking. But this project also is impossible to manage, to imagine without technology. And when I'm saying that, of course, I have in mind Ursula Le Guin, who said that what is technology? Technology is our engagement with the material world, you know, but this material world is also, AI is also part of this material world, you know. So we are also, as part of the Swamp School, working on the so-called Swamp Intelligent project, inspired by Stafford Beer and Gordon Pask, trying to create a swamp brain, right, Nomeda?
Right. So here, the Swamp Intelligence module, or a Swamp AI module, is taught during this period of the Swamp School to discriminate between architecture and nature. And his task, or her task, in this case, is to imagine and to produce the hybrid, something between the architecture and nature. So it picks up different categories just by itself, whatever it wants, or she wants from the categories of architecture and categories of nature, and produces this like very weird hybrids, which are quite uncanny for the human, I think, gaze of you. Okay.
So this swamp intelligence, also part of the three figures, of the four figures.
Exactly.
Of the four figures. So swamp has so many facets, so I'm forgetting how many facets swamp has. So it is part of the four figures that construct Swamp Observatory that is recently been installed in this COVID window. Was installed at the mezzanine space at ZKM. And here you can see the projection on the ox bladder, this water ox that you can find in the swamps in Italy, but also in the swamps in Lithuania. Perhaps also Carl Albert Weber was tasting some mozzarella cheese of this water buffalo, I'm not sure. But those four figures are time stack that and olfactory crevice and biotop. And of course, to understand these relations and the model of the swamp, we need epigenetic landscape. The model of epigenetic landscape that is suggested by Waddington, which actually speaks that all the underlying structure is what it drives the surface, right? So when we look at in the swamp, perhaps we see some unarticulated mass, something that that looks like a magma, something that doesn't have a shape, something that is in becoming. But precisely it is a perfect interface for us to understand relationships and interdependencies of Gaia. Swamp Observatory has the four figures, the olfactory crevice that can help us to understand that ear is not shapeless. Ear consists of so many constituencies, and in this case, we're traveling back with the help of Pete to reconstruct the smell of the extinct plants that were already non-existing even in the times of Carl Albert Weber. I think those visitors who would come to the space, even with a mask, I think they can be teleported 1,000 years ago. And also the time stack that goes down to 7,000 years, and also to bring all these troublesome, uncanny, traumatic memories and anxieties we have, and perhaps we inscribe into the environment. And also the biotop. So with this biotop project, we're working with a group of scientists, biologists, who been concentrated in the very defined territory, the critical zone of the swamp in Aukštumala, trying to register movements in time and space in the specific habitat. And these movements are constantly producing new traces and new drawings and the new images. And these images are becoming the image of the swamp. They're becoming the imagination of the swamp. But this imagination is not just speculative and not just biological. It is really entangled with the history. It is entangled with culture. It is entangled with biology, and it is also entangled with technology.
last but not the least, Swamp game is coming soon.
So for us, Swamp has become the future learning environment that helps us to engage the future, learn about the future, and also perhaps train for how can we adapt for the future. We see the pedagogical role of the Swamp as the infrastructure and the environment. I don't think so that we have time to speak about the Swamp game. I think there will be another launch.
I'm afraid we might actually slowly have to come to a close.
On December 12th, I think there will be a launch of the Swamp game. And just to finish, I would like to read a quote by Henry David Thoreau. "Hope and the future for me are not in lawns and cultivated fields, not in towns and cities, but in the imperious and quaking swamps." Thank you.
Thank you.